Mel Kiper and Young Fielding are going head-to-head, alternating, drafting the first 3 rounds of the upcoming NFL Draft. Who will come out on top? That is coming up. Plus, as always, we're responding to your questions, your takes, and your draft dreams live as First Draft starts right now. We appreciate that reception very much. We are back for another edition of First Draft. There they are, the legends, Mel Kiper and Field Yates. I am Greeny. We're with you twice a week, every Monday and Thursday afternoon, but we are creeping ever closer. Actually, next Thursday afternoon we'll be in Green Bay, and it'll be day 1 of the NFL Draft. We're live on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcasts, plus on ESPN2 every Monday. And I'll remind you to scan the QR code on your screen to access the entire First Draft YouTube playlist. Now, we did Mel's final mock draft in our first episode this week, and we're going to get to the alternating draft in just a moment. And I have 3 questions for these guys, and we've got Orange Crushers, and I've got a guy, so we have all the staples. But we must begin with something that has become, I think, the most important topic on this program. I said, please send us your Twitter suggestions or Twitter questions, whatever they may be. And we have this outstanding tweet that we received, and it is from Brian Drake, who tweets, "There is nothing on earth I'm more jealous of than Field Yates' new long hair." Nothing. Field, how do you respond?
Thinking about retirement, Greeny, to be honest with you, because I think it might all be downhill from here. Just let it bask in the glow. You know, it's been quite a process here. It's been 4+ months of, meticulous preparation day in and day out, and resisting the urge to do one of the few things in life outside of work and being with my family and playing golf that I actually get to do with some regularity, which is go to the barbershop. You know why? Because the barbershop represents about a 30-minute window, Greeny, where I don't have my phone on me, my barber Tommy's great guy. We sit there and we talk sports for 30 minutes, and I kind of just zone out. My kids, for those 30 minutes, can't try to jump all over me and distract me. Mel can't call me and tell me about some 7th-round sleeper from directional state. And I've resisted that for 4 months. And the results have been worth it, and then some.
Mel, here's what I think. That I just wonder if you feel like he's encroaching on your turf. You have been so generous over the many years that I've known you. Look, this whole draft thing, you began it. I always introduce you as the man who invented the draft, and now it has become a huge industry, and you are, for those who don't know, and I mean this sincerely, Mel is so welcoming of people, be they at ESPN and other networks who want to get involved in this draft evaluation process, and that's one thing. But now he's really stepping on your toes, Mel. I mean, if he's becoming the one who's known for their hair, then what is going to be left for you?
Well, Greeny, I passed the torch a long time ago to Fielding because guess what? Years ago, I wish Field would have been a little older. I could have passed that torch a long time ago. This hair has been gone for a long time. So it's been, I would say the word is overrated, Greeny and Field, because I kind of lived on this hair for a long time. And I was kind of amazed, people were still talking about the hair when it wasn't even a big deal. It wasn't long. It was kind of receding back and back and back. And they're still talking about Kiper's hair. I'm thinking, are they even watching? Are they looking at it? Do they realize what it was in the 80s and early 90s and mid 90s? It started to really have a problem. And I guess where were you in 1995, Field?
I was in grade school. I was learning how to read, I think, at that age.
Yeah, it's a shame you weren't already at ESPN, because then I could have said, hey, it's all about you now, Field. But now you come along at the right time. And guess what? We're talking about before the show, how often you're going to wash it, what you're going to do here. It's becoming a little bit of a problem. See, mine I just didn't care about. It seems like you have more interest in your hair than I did. People think I did. I really didn't. So I just say back off, just let it go, Field. It looks phenomenal. It doesn't look like you have to touch it. It looks like a 50, 60 mile an hour wind won't impact that hair. It was the same with mine all those years too. So as long as you're doing it the right way, Field, you got to spray it though. Did you spray it?
Got to spray it. Of course. Did I spray it? That's like asking me if I had coffee in the morning. I don't go an hour without coffee. Of course there's spray.
Just make sure when we get to Green Bay on day 3, if it's windy, make sure you don't have it all flapping in the wind,
All right, I got to tell you, I mean, this show is known for its draft insight and analysis, but we are rapidly becoming known for the lettuce, and I for one, feel kind of good about it. Okay,
amen.
Let's dive into the alternating draft. Let's go. This is a fun exercise. Mel and Field alternated the draft over the first 3 rounds, and so without further ado, let's dive in to the top 10 of the alternating draft. So it is my pleasure to declare the mock draft officially open.
The pick is in.
And here we go. Field with the number 1 pick, and this is certainly no surprise, had Cam Ward, quarterback, Miami, going number 1. Mel, with number 2 in the alternating draft, had the Browns taking Travis Hunter, wide receiver, Colorado. Also not a surprise. 3, the Giants selecting Abdul Carter, edge, Penn State. Also not a surprise. Then the Patriots taking Will Campbell, and the Jaguars selecting Mason Graham. So all those things sort of fit together the way they should. Cam Ward, the number 1 player, clearly in this process for the longest period of time. Whether he is actually the best player or not is notwithstanding the importance of the quarterback position. He's clearly been number 1. So we'll dive in. We touched on all of those quickly. I want to dive in at number 6. With the 6th pick in this alternating draft, the Vegas Raiders take Ashton Jeanty, running back, Boise State. And Mel, I just want to get a quick take from you, if I can, on Jeanty going number 6, because running back going this high in a draft where it's been pointed out to me, teams love the running backs, and there were going to be really good ones available in round 2 and beyond. Jeanty would have to be really special to go this high. Is he worthy of it?
First of all, I think we've kind of looked at these running backs in a little different light now than I did back during the season. It didn't really materialize. Now, there's a lot of draftable running backs, but how many are special? And I'll go to Field on this. I don't have high grades on a lot of running backs. I got kind of average grades on a ton of running backs, but not guys that you know are going to be the featured guy, that number 1 running back, okay? That 25 carry a game guy that can lead the way in terms of your ground assault. I don't have those guys. I got complimentary guys. I got number 2 backs. I get that. But I don't see any elite guys. After Jeanty and Amari and Hampton, Travion Henderson will be a good accent piece. Quinshon Judkins, both those Buckeyes. And after that, it's a lot of guys bunched together. So I think this running back group's a little overrated myself, based on where we thought it would be and where it is now. So I think there is a separation with these two. These are the elite guys. These are the special guys. And if the Raiders want to improve a horrible running game, Jeanty's a guarantee. Yeah. It's a position where you give him the ball and you let him go as long as they can block. And he can block. He can catch as well. So Ashton Jeanty is bringing a Raider attitude, a Raider mentality to that football team. Pete Carroll needs that, has to have it. My thing would be, find me another Ashton Jeanty down the line in this draft, okay? Sure, find me another Amari and Hampton. Good luck on that. So I think if you're the Raiders and you want to go Armand Membo, I get it, okay? I get it. He's an offensive lineman. He'll help your running game. He'll help out Geno Smith. Okay, I have no problem with that. But then it'll be interesting to see who the running back is they identify as a guy they're going to move forward with. I mean, I like LaQuint Allen from Syracuse. It's a 5th-round pick. I think it could be a really good player at that point. He's got real good hands catching the football. You can move him out wide. I like Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee in that 3rd, 4th-round area. But to me, Field, find me the guys that are even close to Ashton Jeanty and Amari and Hampton.
Yeah, I think we have to break it down this way, Mel and Greeny, is if you're looking for a player who has a chance to become part of the class that I would say right now is led by or includes the likes of Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey when he is healthy, and perhaps Josh Jacobs based off how he played with the Packers last year, Bijan Robinson, right? There's one, in my view, and I think Mel feels like there's 2, but I believe there's one player who has a chance to get into that class and probably get there pretty soon. That's Ashton Jeanty. But if you're looking for a lot of guys, I've got 29 that have draftable grades, as in probably around, call it within my top 250. You can find a lot of guys that can become the second back in, or a guy who, if you pair him with somebody else, like Ohio State did with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, you can get great versions of them. Well, let's just take this a step further if you're looking at roster construction in the NFL. Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, all incredible players that probably belong in that top-tier class. Bijan Robinson as well. But what we have learned is that those players by themselves don't make a playoff roster, right? Saquon, Henry, and Jacobs all played on bad teams in 2023. They all landed on great teams in 2024 and had this huge push. So if you're the Raiders and you're being honest about where you're at right now, even with the dramatic upgraded quarterback with Geno Smith, you play in the toughest division in the NFL. This might take a little while here. So would you be better served attacking running back a little bit later on in the draft and sacrificing a bit at running back, while drafting Armand Membu or somebody else at 6? Or do you feel like, hey, you know what? We're ready to go here, baby. Pete Carroll's the oldest coach in NFL history. He's 73 years old. Geno Smith is a guy that we think we can win with right now. Let's get Ashton Jeanty and let's supercharge this thing. That, to me, is the evaluation that John Spytek, the GM of the Raiders, must have when evaluating whether to take Jeanty at 6 or not.
And Phil, I'll go a little further with this, Greeny. I'm going to talk about the Denver Broncos. They got to get a running back. Yeah. That's one team you identified with Sean Payton, with Bo Nix, that has to have a running back. And I think it's got to be Hampton if he's there, and Dallas doesn't take it. What if Jeanty gets past, as Field suggests, the Raiders take, say, Armand Membo, offensive tackle out of Missouri, and then he gets past the Bears, and he gets into that area where they could maybe move up. Dallas is sitting at 12. Is Ashton Jeanty going to be at a spot in this draft where Denver will feel, hey, we got to move up and get him? And because there is a separation in their mind, say, between Jeanty and Hampton. Then they got to go up. Jeanty's going to be interested. If he has to go to the Raiders, I'll say this to you, Field. Does he go to the Bears? Does he go to the Cowboys?
Or Saints? I think he goes somewhere, but I think his range is 1 through 10. I think the Bears are the floor for Ashton Jeanty. Because I just think between the Raiders, the Saints, and the Bears, there's 3 teams that I believe are very interested in what Ashton Jeanty could bring to them. The Bears, probably the most tantalizing possibility because of the Ben Johnson factor, and we saw what he has done in recent years with the dynamic running back duo. I don't think that Ashton Jeanty and DeAndre Swift immediately is on the same level as Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery.
I go to this, let me ask you this, just to be the devil's advocate here. If he's okay for the Saints, how can he not be okay for the Raiders? Hold
on. I'll tell you why, Mel. Because how many logical things have the Saints done over the past half dozen years? I mean that. I'm half joking, but I'm totally serious. Like, I guess that was oxymoronic. I'm only joking a little bit. I am mostly serious. The Saints have had some of the most curious roster building decisions in the league for quite some time now. So, yeah, I would argue a team that should strip it down to the stud should go for a tackle, a pass rusher, a premium position player. But the Saints think they're going to compete this year. They really do. I mean, look, they signed guys like Justin Reed and Brandon Cooks closing in on 30 or already into their 30s to, decent money. I think they want to compete in this relatively weak NFC South. So I would not discount the possibility of Jeanty at number 9.
And for what it's worth, I have Jet fans all over the place, talk show hosts, and even some people who cover the team telling me that if he slides past 6, the Jets might consider him at 7. We'll see. Let's move on through this. At 7 in the alternating draft, and again, this is the alternating mock that Field and Mel put together. At 7, we have the Jets taking Armand Membu, the tackle from Missouri. At 8, the Panthers selecting Jalen Walker from Georgia. And then we get to 9 with the 9th pick in this draft. The New Orleans Saints do take the quarterback, Shedeur Sanders from Colorado, the most talked about player in this class by a wide margin. Field.
If he's there, Greeny, right? Because I think on Monday we'll probably spend some time talking about the possibility that feels slightly more real now than it did maybe even as recently as 2 days ago of Shedeur Sanders being gone by pick number 3 overall. That's right, to the New York Giants. That being said, if Shedeur Sanders makes it to number 9, I think any quarterback is in the conversation for the Saints. Again, I mentioned how the Saints, I believe, think they can play to win this year. I don't think this Derek Carr news completely caught them by surprise. At the same time, it has to influence your decision-making a little bit when you're on the clock at number 9. Shedeur has remained my quarterback 2 throughout the process. I don't need to list all the things that I like about Shedeur, but given that he's the 16th rated prospect and he would go number 9, that is a borderline 0 tax to pay at the quarterback position in the NFL draft. And I know, Mel, you love the idea of Shedeur in New Orleans for some of the climate and other considerations.
Love it for this reason. I went back to my Drew Brees write-up, Greeny and Field coming out of Purdue. And the questions with Drew Brees. Yeah, it was basically, yeah. So I have it out in the garage. It's a relic. But I will say this: 6, like I am, 6 foot and a quarter. About think about where he was, about 215 pounds. Which Shedeur, 6'1.5", taller, 212 pounds. Right. Arm strength was the issue with Drew coming out. Didn't have the strongest of arms. Right. He ran 4.78 at the combine. We estimate Shedeur in the 4.8s, whatever it is. Similar there. I question Joe Tiller's offense. Did it help Drew Brees to put up those kind of numbers? Then you think about, I've said in there, wind, conditions. Where's he going to go is important. Wind, right? Where'd he go? He went to the Chargers. Yep. Then he went to the Saints in a dome, right? Okay. Shedeur, New York, the Giants, we always said Phil Simms was great cutting through that win with that tight spiral, right? Tight spirals cut through win. What do you say about Shedeur? A little wobbly here and there, right? Bottom line is Peyton Manning, same thing. Where'd he go? Dome Stadium, right? The Dome would be perfect. New coach, Kellen Moore. Dome in Atlanta when you play there. Carolina, Tampa Bay. Love that. Let me say this about Shedeur. One thing we haven't talked about, I brought it up yesterday. No running game. Marion Hampton and Ashton Jeanty guys had more rushing yards in 1.5 games than their leading rusher did the entire year, both in 2023 and 2024. He had no benefit of a running game. He had an offensive line that was Ole block after Ole block. So for Shedeur, throw in the lack of a running game too, was non-existent in a lot of games. And then you also talk about the Giants. You brought them up in green and said, what about the Giants and a private workout and all this? What if he gets into the middle of the first round? What if he drops? They got to know and be prepared. Is this guy the right guy for us to go get? If we do take Abdul Carter at 3, can we, and Shedeur drops, is he good enough to go get? Can we give up some assets next year, the year to go get Shedeur Sanders? And then they're also going to look at Tyler Shough, right? And Jalen Milroe. How much of a gap is there between where we are right now grade-wise with Shedeur and where we are with Milroe/Shough, right? Is one of those two close enough with Shedeur where we can wait and get that quarterback in the early second round, or maybe move up a couple spots and get him there? So they got a lot of work to do in these final days leading up to the draft to figure out Shedeur in relationship to Milroe and Shough. And also, if he drops, or do we feel strong? Do we have conviction on Shedeur to go get him? Because if you go get him, you're saying he's our young quarterback, developmental quarterback of the not-too-distant future behind, Wilson, Winston, and DeVito, right? Wilson, Winston, DeVito, then you got Shedeur. Or you get Shough or Milroe. That's what they're trying to figure out right now. Just about Shedeur at 3, but if Shedeur drops, and then how does he relate to the other quarterbacks that we've been talking about, Milroe and Shough?
Well, I think what we identify here is that 9 is going to be the pressure point moment where, assuming, Field, to your point, assuming Shedeur gets through 3, and all the insiders I have on my show on Get Up are telling me they do not expect the Giants to take him at 3. Obviously, we'll never know. We'll never know. We will definitively know.
In a week,
We won't know until next Thursday night. But at that point, if he's still on the board, so many signs seem to point to 9 and New Orleans. If he gets through there, then it's going to become a fascinating show. Okay. Sound the alarms. We have a quarterback trade in this alternating draft. The Browns trade into the back end of round 1 to take Jackson Dart. They get up to number 29 with Washington. Washington gets a second rounder and a third rounder. The details of the trade are not as interesting as what actually happens, and that is the Browns moving up to get Jackson Dart. There will be a lot of fans who will love it. A guy named That Random Guy is not one of them. He on Twitter wrote, I know why you have the Browns trading back up into the first round, but I hate the move. We need so much help in losing 2 day 2 picks in a deep draft. Sucks. So, Mel, let's start with you. The impact of this trade, Cleveland going up aggressively to get the guy they want.
Hey, if they feel he's the quarterback of the future for them, and they feel like in that division we can get and close that gap with Jackson Dart, that's what you're asking him to do, is be not Burrow-like, not Lamar-like, but close enough. Okay, you cannot be 4th in the division and be able to have any chance. Pittsburgh did it with their situation at quarterback, and what happened? 9 straight years losing in the playoffs, right? They kept the streak of non-losing seasons alive for 20-plus years, but they're still 9 years losing playoff games. So you can be fortunate and just get into the playoffs, kick your way in there, find a way to get in, but what are you going to do? You're not going to do any damage. You got to figure out the quarterback position and close the gap and get even. And that's what all these teams have to do now. And that speaks to where we are right now with some quarterbacks. Callahan in Tennessee, right? If he even thought his quarterback, Levis, could be a single-double, he's not a grand slam or home run. He's hoping Cam Ward can be a grand slam home run. The new GM was with Patrick Mahomes, right? He's a grand slam. He's not a home run. He's a grand slam. Yeah. The days of single-double are over, guys. It's over. Because also the pressure within the organization to get to the divisional leader at quarterback. or who's second in that division at quarterback, or who's third. If you're fourth, you got to get there. And singles and doubles aren't going to do it. So that's where we are with Jackson Dart. To get back to Jackson, is Jackson going to be a single double? Is he going to be a triple home run grand slam? That's what you have to decide here. And if you're Cleveland, you got to think triple double grand slam. If you don't think Jackson Dart can ever get to that point, you don't make that deal.
So let me start here. I think that people need to stop trying to have their cake and eat it too in the draft, right? Like, hey, it's not so much that I hate Jackson Dart, it's that I hate the idea of trading up and losing picks that we're going to have later to continue to build the rest of the roster. I've got bad news for you. I don't care how good the rest of the roster is. If the quarterback isn't in place, it won't matter. As a matter of fact, like Cleveland last year, I didn't feel like the rest of the roster was 3-14 bad, but the quarterback play was so abhorrent for much of the season that it didn't matter whether the roster was decent in several key spots. Guys like Myles Garrett are as good as it possibly could be in the NFL at their respective positions, and their seasons largely go all for naught. So I get it. You'd love to have your picks and everybody would just fall to you. The draft does not work that way. You have to be selectively aggressive. And I hear Mel on the idea of you got to make sure that you have a triple, a home run, or a grand slam. The only thing that I would say is that when you make this move, and the cost is not particularly prohibitive, a second and a third for a first and a fourth, because the contract will be so suppressed relative to what it would be either on the open market as a free agent or what Cam Ward will sign with Tennessee. The 29th pick in the draft is going to be, I don't know the specifics of it, 4 years, $10, $12 million. Like the risk financially is so insignificant that I think you're okay if the ceiling for the quarterback in your eyes is a little bit lower, because it's not as hard to move off of the quarterback if you whiff a year or two from now. Now, it might be somebody else that's moving on from that quarterback in place of the current Cleveland regime, but I feel like this kind of threads a needle for Cleveland where they can land a difference maker, whether it's Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter at number 2, not dismissing that yet, by the way, Greeny, and then also get a quarterback later to add to this quarterback room that right now has the veteran in Joe Flacco, the resurrection project in Kenny Pickett, we'll see whether that works out or not, and then the young pillar in Jackson Dart.
Okay, so that's a fascinating trade, and we will see what happens. Now, I want to get into something brand new for our program. Sarah Abbott is producing our show this week, and she had a terrific idea. And by terrific, I mean it involves more of me. So here's the idea that she had. She said, let's do something called Mic Drop, in which Greeny gets to ask a question. There it is! In which Greeny gets to ask questions to Field and Mel about what may and may not happen coming up next week in Green Bay. And here's the one. I'm going to start with you, Mel, on Mic Drop question number 1. When we get to next week, what will you say if the second quarterback picked, whenever that happens, is not Shedeur Sanders? So I had written it initially as Jackson Dart, but I'm starting to hear more and more support for Tyler Shough and either way, no matter what it is. If at any point Roger Goodell gets up there and says the name of a quarterback after the first pick goes to Cam Ward, and that name isn't Shedeur Sanders, Mel, what will be the first thing you say?
Makes no sense. That's what I'll say. Makes absolutely no sense. Tyler Shough's going to be 26. I wasn't wowed over by Tyler Shough to say first round this year at any stage, and he had a good year at Louisville. First year he stayed healthy from start to finish outside of the COVID year, which was a shortened season. So did I see first round with Tyler Shough at any point? No. I know Louis Riddick disagrees, and that Louis has a right to his opinion. He's a great evaluator. We'll see how that works out. Jalen Milroe, I watched him over the last 3 quarters of the season. If you're not accurate in college, you're going to be accurate in the NFL. Maybe you can be, but it's not a given. Everybody said Josh Allen couldn't do what he did. Josh did it. Yep. But for Jalen Milroe, seeing the field, the instinctual ability throwing the football and reading the defense and going through progressions and then being accurate to all levels, I couldn't do that. So I will say, makes no sense. Yep. If Cam Ward's one, and another quarterback other than Shedeur Sanders is the second quarterback off the board, and it is Shough or Milroe or whoever it's going to be.
Jackson Dart.
Kyle McCord, you pick them. No, I will say, I won't say ridiculous, because, hey, they can do whatever they want to do. In terms of my grade and how I feel about Shedeur, Field, and I'll ask you, you're not as high on Shedeur as I am.
Yeah, but
so I'll say
that's
crazy. It makes no sense. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say that it's crazy and it makes no sense. I've got Shedeur Sanders as 16th on the board, Jackson Dart at 35, Tyler Shough at 36. A 19-spot difference that early in the order is a big difference in my estimation between these prospects. So I will feel as though I would prefer I would feel as though that team should have instead taken Shedeur Sanders. But will I understand it? I will, for this reason. If you were to imagine the three of us going to a neighborhood in some arbitrary town, you name it, somewhere down in Maryland to make Mel happy, and looking at 3 homes that are all similar sized and perhaps listed on Zillow at the same price. Mel might say, I like house A, and Greeny might say, I like house B, and I say, I like house C. Mel likes the views in A, Greeny likes the pool in B, and I like the big deck in pool C. That's a reasonable thing that could happen, right? With quarterbacks. I'm not trying to commoditize them to the extent of being a house, but you guys get what I'm saying. You know, what the Saints might value in a quarterback might be different than what the Steelers might value in a quarterback, or the Giants might value in a quarterback. And while there are some things that each of those 3, Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, and Tyler Shough, do well, there also are some subtle differences that might be the way that a team like the Saints or the Pittsburgh Steelers or the New York Giants bypass Shedeur Sanders for, as an example, Jackson Dart.
Okay, that's exactly why Giovanni Carmazzi went ahead of Tom Brady. Because Giovanni Carmazzi had more talent than Tom Brady. That's why he went in the third round, had a Hofstra, right? And Tom Brady went in the 6th round. No, I'm just saying that's why if another quarterback with more so-called talent goes ahead of Shedeur Sanders, it's the same reason why Carmazzi out of Hofstra went 3 rounds ahead of Brady from Michigan. End of story.
Yeah, but those, sometimes they do.
Mic drop there.
Yeah, sometimes those things do work out, though, right? I mean, and I'm not trying to totally relitigate the 2018 draft class, but when Patrick Mahomes came out, it was a bet on the talent, right? Because the final year at Texas Tech was he had to basically try to score 70 points every single week because the defense was non-existent there, and some people said, hey, raw, toolsy, never going to put it together. So there are teams who bet on the upside, and that upside ends up winning for them. I'm not sure any team has won more than the Chiefs have with Patrick Mahomes in the 7 seasons having him as their quarterback.
Okay, quick evaluation here. Mic drop is a hit.
Yeah.
This is going well. Very, very well. Field, here's mic drop question number 2, and this one we'll start with you. So Dan Orlovsky, here's the setup. Dan Orlovsky said to me on Get Up the other day, the Cowboys need a receiver in this draft. They need to take Matthew Golden or whichever receiver they decide they like at number 12 to put opposite C.D. Lamb. I have been operating under the impression that the receivers will start a little later than that when we get to next Thursday night. So here is the question, Field.
Yep.
What is the earliest, i.e. the lowest number pick that you would use in this draft on one of the wide receivers?
Number 12 overall. And my 2 top-ranked wide receivers, not including Travis Hunter, he's the unicorn, is Tedero McMillan at number 14, Matthew Golden at number 15. So back-to-back spots in the top 200, which drops, by the way, today on ESPN.com. The Cowboys have this significant need for a wide receiver. I just talked about how everybody might view the quarterbacks a little bit differently depending on what traits they want. Same thing goes here with the Dallas Cowboys, because I believe if it's a wide receiver at number 12, it's one of Matthew Golden or Tedero McMillan. If you're looking for the guy that's going to change the dimensions of your offense vertically, clearly it's Matthew Golden, who had that 4.29 40 at the combine, rolls in and out of his cuts, really generates separation at the top of his routes, and obviously, if he has space, he's gone, right? Whereas Tedero McMillan changes the way that you can play the game a little bit more horizontally. This big, physical, huge catch radius wide receiver who Dak Prescott in the red zone might look over at Tedero McMillan wearing number 4 or whatever his professional number ends up being and saying, yeah, he's covered up by this top tier corner, but when I throw it his way, it's like me as the setter on the volleyball court helping Tedero McMillan go down for the spike using his volleyball background because he's just too big for a single corner to man up throughout the course of 60 minutes. So it depends on what you're looking for.
Let me say this, guys.
Go ahead.
And Field, when we talk about the teams, there are teams that could look wide receiver earlier than 12.
Yeah, they 8 and 9.
And I'll tell you what, who said just win, baby? It was Al Davis, the late, great Al Davis. I grew up a huge fan of it. The only reason I'm interested and love the NFL, Al Davis, right? Al Davis knew talent better than just about anybody. And Al Davis made some mistakes, and he would go with speed. Yeah. And Al Davis, late great Al Davis, were with the Raiders, 4.29 on the heels of the kind of year. The Raiders will be looking at Matthew Golden, okay? Al Davis looked Darius Hayward Bay back in the day out of Maryland because he had that great 40 time. That would be Cliff Branch. Remember Cliff Branch?
Yep.
Yeah.
What in the coffin, Branch? Okay, to me, late great Al Davis may have looked at Matthew Golden. You know, so I will say, and going back to quarterback screening, I'd call it not a mic drop. I would call it a lemon drop if another quarterback goes ahead of Shedeur. Okay?
Can I have one more thing before we get to the third question, Greeny?
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to miss a lot of things about being with you guys when First Draft goes on a little summer hiatus. Maybe near the top of the list will be when Mel will say, hey, do you remember this guy? And he pulls up some guard from 1974.
Right.
And Mel, I've got, unfortunately, 80% of them I don't recall. Like, when you tell me, like, do you remember, Dan Fouts? I got you there, right? But when it's like a guard from the, Los Angeles Raiders back in the day, my memory doesn't go that far back.
No, but Cliff Branch was a great player.
Cliff
Branch was a great player on those Raider teams. He was there with Biletnikoff on the Stabler-led teams, with Art Shell and Gene Upshaw on the offensive line and Otis Sistrunk on the defense. And then he was the guy who stuck around and played on the Plunkett teams as well. So Cliff Branch was number 21. Cliff Branch. Yep. I fell in love with football with those teams too, Mel. Okay, here's the third mic drop question. And this one I'm particularly proud of. Mel, I'll start with you. After the big two, I'm including Travis Hunter in this because he's just not the answer I'm looking for, even if he winds up being a receiver. After the big two, meaning Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, which defensive player in this class will be the best pro? Which defensive guy is going to be, 10 years from now, we're going to say he was the best player drafted in this class?
I had a GM tell me, don't overthink it with Mason Graham. That was exactly what he said. Don't overthink it. And because, you say, okay, Aaron Donald didn't go in a top group, okay? Look what he was able to do because he didn't necessarily look the part coming out of college, You look at a guy like Mason Graham coming out of Michigan, what he was able to do at Michigan. He talked about the wrestling background, and I know we see Jalen Walker as a guy who can do so many things off ball and off the edge. I think Mason Graham Field is a safe, pick, what you're getting, and like I say, Aiden Hutchinson, everybody kind of scrutinized, and he didn't go number one, and look what happened there. And there's Jacksonville, who passed on a Michigan Wolverine, and now will they pass on another Michigan Wolverine, who we had, by the way, have had going to Jacksonville for like 3-4 months now, right? Yep. What will Jacksonville do? They need Mason Graham. Yes, they could go a different direction here. Yes, they could, but they already passed on one Michigan Wolverine. What will they do here with Mason Graham? I would take him. We'll see if they do.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of the Will Campbell conversation when I ask people, and I understand the arm length thing, but I just say, like, when you're watching the tape, how frequently did the arm length bother you? So what I would ask people who don't think it's Mason Graham is, all right, so when you watch Mason Graham, what are the areas that you don't like? What is it that you feel like is a limitation for him? Does he impact the passing game because of his ability to collapse the pocket? I think the answer is very clearly yes. Does he impact the running game when he had the second best run stuff percentage amongst the draft-eligible defensive tackles, trailing only J.J. Pegues from Ole Miss, who is this massive mountain of a human? That is also true. Go back to 2022, Mel, which I know that feels like an eternity ago, but Mason Graham, this 3-star recruit from the West Coast, enters in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or arrives at Ann Arbor, Michigan with this highly talented defensive unit for the Wolverines. He might have been the best player that year on the team. I mean, defensively at least, right? And I know that sounds a bit like hyperbole with Will Johnson being there and all the guys that were drafted last year. They had a bunch of defensive players drafted. But that's how good Michigan thought Mason Graham was the minute he walked on campus. As a true freshman at 18 years old, he's handling 2-gap responsibilities in the Big Ten, taking on double teams like he's like Mount Mason Graham. So I just continue to come back to this. If you're bored of Mason Graham and that's the reason why you're not as optimistic on him, that's fine. But the tape is pretty darn clean for a guy that I think deserves to be one of the first 5 players taken.
Okay. Mike Drops is a winner. I think we can all, if there's one thing we can all agree on, that one gets a first-round grade for sure. Sarah, that was all you're doing. Okay, with that said, let's move on to some of the interesting second-round picks in the alternating draft that Field and Mel just did. With the 34th pick in the draft, so we had the Browns trading up to take a quarterback at the end of the first round. Mel and Field, this was Mel's pick, have the Giants staying where they are at 34 and taking Tyler Shough, the quarterback from Louisville. We've mentioned before, Louis Riddick loves him. We'll see if he winds up being in the pros again. He will turn 26 years old during the course of this season. Field at the 35th pick has the Tennessee Titans taking Jaden Higgins. Field at the 43rd pick has the 49ers taking James Pearce Jr., who is a fascinating prospect in this class for a variety of reasons. And then Mel at number 50 has Seattle taking Jonas Savaiinaea. So let's go back over those ones quickly. And Mel, feel free to comment on any of those that you would like. We had Shough in there. We had Higgins in there. We had Pearce in there. We have Savaiinaea in there. What is it you want to tell the people?
Well, I think Shough to the Giants. Why? Because he can spin it. That's the one thing I've said for months about Shough. He can spin it. He's 6'5", he's 220 plus pounds. He ran 4.63, and he can throw the football. And like I say, dealing with weather, wind in New York with the Giants is important, okay? And in that division, Washington and Philadelphia, weather will be a factor there as well. So I think Tyler Shough, will Brian Daboll see in Tyler Shough the kind of skill set that you need to deal with that? And Jalen Milroe is going to be in that mix too, because he has that skill set. And the accuracy issue, Josh Allen, some said I didn't agree. Some said he had an accuracy issue coming out, right? And then he couldn't fix it, whatever. That's why people were down on him. Tyler Shough, Jalen Milroe, who does Brian Daboll feel is the best developmental quarterback that we can have ready maybe for 2026, okay? Because we got 3 quarterbacks in that quarterback room. We're going to add a young quarterback. Who can be the best guy for me if I can survive this year? GM and head coach on the hot seat, guys, and they got to win some games, and they got to show promise, and having that young quarterback is something owner wants. So it'll be interesting to see how they attack it. But Tyler Shough, I just felt like he had a better overall year from a consistency standpoint than Jalen Milroe, and he can throw that tight spiral that is necessary where they play and in the division they play in.
I'll mention James Pearce Jr. here, Greeny, only because I think there are some people that are saying, wait, 43rd overall for James Pearce Jr.? Really, a guy that entered the season is potentially a top 5 pick in the draft? Hard guy to pinpoint, to be entirely candid with you. The very good from James Pearce is obvious, a 4.47 40 at 250-some pounds as an edge rusher with that elite edge pressure percentage from this past season. And the way that he moves, I mean, this is just unteachable stuff. Question I think people are trying to figure out is just what are you going to get in on a down-by-down basis from James Pearce? I think late first is possible, maybe even earlier than that for James Pearce, but I think that second round should not be dismissed for this player despite the immense talent. So it may seem like Mel and I messed up somewhere along the line and forgot to include James Pearce. That was not the case. This, I think, is a possibility for where he winds up ending up.
He's an intriguing prospect for a variety of reasons. Yeah. We'll leave it there on that, and I agree with you. I think that just based upon the observations I have made of the mock drafts that I've seen and everything else, I've seen him going as high as like 15 or 16, and I've seen him going as low as you guys just put him. So that will be one of the storylines to watch for rounds 1 and 2 for those people who are actually in the know. Okay, let's move it forward here. We've got a couple of third rounders. We got a guy, and we got Orange Crushers. So let's wrap those things up here. Mel, during the pre-draft process, the two of you guys always have a guy. So let's hear yours this week. Mel, give me a guy.
I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, and Rylie Mills had a heck of a year. He's one of the key guys, defensive lineman out of Notre Dame. He's got some scheme versatility. He was playing great. Then he got hurt against Indiana. And when he hurt that knee against Indiana, it was crushing. And that was something that was a big blow to that football team and to Rylie Mills. And he was ascending, Field. Yeah. He was moving up the draft board. And Rylie Mills, we talk about the depth at that defensive tackle spot. He was one of those guys who was going to be one of my top 10 defensive tackles and was clearly going to lock in that role and in that spot. Then the injury occurred. Now, one of many. This was the theme of the draft this year, Greeny and Field, is injuries. Yep. Whether it happened in week 2, whether it happened midseason, or whether it happened in the playoffs like it did for Rylie Mills. This is a kid, 6'5", 291 pounds, had almost 10 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. Then the injury, okay? And I said he's scheme versatile, and he plays hard, down after down. And this guy is going to be an asset to your team, whether it's in that rotation, whether it's because of his versatility and the way he plays. Inspired football player, Rylie Mills. And you're probably going to get him because of the injury and maybe a bargain point. Like I said, a lot of these guys, whether it's Revel Jr., corner at East Carolina, Morrison at Notre Dame, right? We're talking about a lot of guys. Now Jahad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama. Kevin Winston Jr., safety out of Penn State. Yep. This is a season where so many guys got hurt. And Rylie Mills, late in the season, playoff game against Indiana, injured, or he would have gone maybe a round and a half, 2 rounds higher. So I look at value. I'll sacrifice a year to get him back to full strength, get him back to 100% when I know I got a second-round talent and I can get him maybe on day 3.
Granny, I'll give you one. Then I know that I'm known as the Ravens guy on this show, so I apologize for going back to the well, but I have to do it. It's Demetrius Knight Jr., the linebacker from South Carolina, who ends up to the Baltimore Ravens in round 3. And Knight spent this past season at South Carolina after prior stops at both Georgia Tech and also University of Charlotte. So he's a 6-year college player. You know, for stand-up inside linebackers, I know that production can be a bit misleading at times, but I do like guys that impact the football, that cause turnovers, that find their way to the quarterback, and he kind of checked all those boxes this past year, did Demetrius Knight. And I've talked about this previously. I believe linebacker might be the position where NFL teams have different criteria depending on which team you are specifically talking about. Some teams will settle for small guys who are fast. The Buffalo Bills have players like Matt Milano who have thrived for a long time. Some people like these big hulking linebackers that have the ability to meet you at the point of attack. That was how Bill Belichick played forever with his linebackers. The Ravens have Roquan Smith, who covers so much ground, but Demetrius Knight Jr. will be closer to that big, imposing downhill linebacker. The way that he just sniffs out stuff at the line of scrimmage was so impressive this past year. Plays with a ton of force. So I'm trying to make Mel happy. I hope I do so with this Demetrius Knight Jr. pick.
All right, Mel looks happy from what I can tell.
Yeah,
it's not always clear, but I think he's happy.
He had a good year. The thing is, too, guys, I think when you look up at Rylie Mills with Harbaugh and the Chargers, and you mentioned Knight to the Ravens, it's an attitude. It's an approach that you need to have to play for Harbaugh, to play like a Raven. And Demetrius Knight certainly has that, guys.
Okay, let's round it out today with Mel's favorite feature. It is called Orange Crushers. If you're someone who sort of jumps in with us here late in the year, late in the draft process, we've been doing this all season long. Players that are flying under the radar, whose names you should know, and now you're going to. Mel, who was your Orange Crusher of the week?
This was so easy. Andrew Mukuba, formerly of Clemson, goes to the Texas Longhorns and has a great year. This kid is a lights-out, rock'em sock'em hitter, football player. He plays like he's 6'3", but he plays like he's Nick Emanwari.
Yeah.
You know, he was like 6'3", 230, but he's 5'11" and change, 186 pounds. He's fast. 4.46 was his 40. He had 69 tackles. He had 5 interceptions. Only had 1 at Clemson, but 5 this year. Fast, tough, smart. This kid will throw that 5'11 and a quarter, 186-pound frame around. He showed ball skills this year. He is a guy, I'll tell you what, he is, talking about a heat-seeking missile on the field. I'll tell you, he shot like a cannon, whether it was tackling a running back, going to get the tight end receiver. He is dynamic, and I was impressed with Andrew Mukuba to the point where I even thought about maybe second round for him.
Yeah.
Put him in the third round to the Jaguars. Are you kidding me? They can use a guy like that, the Jacksonville Jaguars kind. If he gets to the third round, he'll be one heck of a pick because he is an impactful performer. And I'll tell you what, lights out with Andrew Mukuba.
Yeah, I've got a round 3 grade on Mukuba as well, Mel. I will only say this. If for some reason he makes it to round 4, does Andrew Mukuba, I think it's a reflection that the NFL feels like that body type, these smaller guys who lack that armor, are going to have a harder time translating that physical game at the NFL level when players are just bigger, faster, and stronger. But he is inside my top 100.
He gets to the 4th round, Phil, be my number 1 guy going into day 3.
I like it. And probably darn close to it for me as well.
He'll be number 1 on my day 3 board if he gets to the 4th round.
I'm just saying, if it does happen, I think it's because teams just don't believe the body type will translate as well. My guy, and I want to say at some point, my Orange Crusher Greeny, he's been discussed, but when we only have the 3rd round to choose from, there's probably likely to be some crossover from previous shows. How about Ty Robinson, though, going from the Nebraska Cornhuskers to the Houston Texans, who had 7 sacks this past season, and Mel was just talking about the depth of this defensive tackle class. There is a lot of it, but you are getting a powerful, explosive, violent pass rusher is Ty Robinson, who also can impact the running game. On top of what you're getting as an interior rusher, I just say this, Mel. You talk to people about Ty Robinson, the human. I mean, you think you're hearing someone be endorsed for president of I guess the United States or the person that you want to have babysit your children. It's like he gets the highest regard. Everybody loves this guy. They absolutely love the human that Ty Robinson is. So I think there's a chance that he goes even higher than where we have him in round 3.
Hey, did you see at the Senior Bowl practices you were there when Mike Tomlin kind of gave him a little bit of a suggestion? Yeah. And what happened on the next play, right?
Dominance.
Yeah, what happened? Yeah, exactly. And what else did he do? Remember Patrick Ricard? We see Patrick Ricard doing great things for the Ravens, right? Former defensive lineman at Maine, right?
Yep.
Ty Robinson lines up in that backfield.
Yeah.
And bang, he will block you, and he will send you into the stands, right, in short yards goal line. So you can utilize him on the offensive side as a lead blocker as well. So, no, Ty Robinson is a great orange. You got Ty Robinson and Mukuba. I'll tell you what. Some players when I feel better buckle it up. You better buckle it up. Yeah, okay, when you got Mukuba and Ty Robinson on the football field.
We'll see if they wind up on the same field. That is Orange Crushers. You know what just occurred to me, gentlemen? that the next time the three of us are together and that all of you will be with us, which will be next Monday, we will be to the week of the draft. We will all be getting set for our flights, or in Mel's case, his drive to Green Bay.
I'm flying, Field. And
You're flying?
Greeny.
He's flying. Yeah, breaking news.
Yeah,
Mel
breaking
is
news.
flying. This is like that.
Up and away. Up and away.
It's like that scene from Peter Pan. I'm flying. Okay. Anyway, that's it for this edition
Too long a drive,
of First
Greeny. I
Draft.
can't even do that.
Don't forget to scan the QR code. You can like and subscribe to the podcast and be with us every Monday and Thursday for full NFL draft analysis. Plus, send your questions using the hashtag #FirstDraft for a chance to be featured on the program. We'll be back on Monday. It'll be the week of the draft for Mel and for Field. I am Greeny. Keep your hair where it needs to be, and we'll see you next week.